Welcome to the Pure Parenthood podcast, brought to you by Purebaby. I'm your host, Tiffany Wells, and I'm the head educator here at Purebaby. Hi everyone, I'm excited to welcome our guest today, Rachael Waia, mum of two and co-founder and director of Tiny Hearts Education. For those of you who haven't heard of Tiny Hearts, they offer baby first aid and birth education all around Australia. They also have a birth story podcast called Bump Birth and Beyond, which shares women's birth experiences. Rachael has an extensive education background, and I've been lucky enough to have had the opportunity to work with Rachael over the past few years for our nesting workshops and other collaborative ventures with Purebaby. Today we'll be discussing first aid and its importance for first-time parents and how to be prepared before bringing your little one home. There's a lot of valuable information in today's episode, so get ready to take some notes, everyone. And don't forget, if you've missed anything, you can read more about it in our blog, which will be in our episode notes or description. Hi, Rach. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me, Tiffany. I'm really excited to chat to everyone today.
It'll be great. I'm sure our listeners are very keen to learn more about this important topic today. I would have loved to have known a bit more before having my first baby. Looking back on things now and knowing what I know now, I think I feel really lucky that I didn't have any major health issues with her, actually. And I don't think I would have been as well equipped as I would be now, that's for sure. Did you gain your qualifications before having your two kids? And in your view, did that help? And also, I guess, what do you think is the most important thing or the reason why people need to know about first aid before becoming a parent themselves?
Well, Tiffany, I was really lucky to be able to participate in CPR and first aid training since I was 15 years old. So the school that I went to were really passionate about giving us life skills, and I guess at the time I probably didn't appreciate how important that was or how much that would model my career. So I've held a current CPR certificate and first aid certificate since I was 15, and I'm not going to tell you how many years that's been, but it's quite a while. And unfortunately in that time I have had to use the skill set several times. So yes, I was qualified before having both my children, but saying that, there's a whole lot of things that are paediatric specific that aren't covered in normal first aid courses. And I suppose that's where Tiny Hearts is so different to a normal first aid course that you would do with work or school. You know, there's things in there like febrile convulsions and managing temperatures and, bacterial infections and viral infections that, we would have no idea about sometimes until our child's sick and our doctor will brief us or until, we all turn to Dr. Google. So I think that's why Tiny Hearts is such an important course for new and expecting parents to do, just to prepare you for all those things that you may see as a new and expecting parent. And I think it's so important to have this information before you do have your children, and a lot of the people that do the course are either brand new parents or they are expecting, or they might be even doing a refresher. And the reason is because prevention is better than cure. Knowing what to do in the event of an emergency before the emergency happens is definitely going to give you that peace of mind and that experience at the time, rather than waiting until something's happened and then going, oh, wow, I wish I'd known.
Yeah. Definitely. I can't wait to hear some more hot tips today, and I'm sure all the people at home can't wait as well. So let's get right into it, because I think that there's so much to cover today, and this topic's massive, and I'm so passionate as well about keeping my children safe and knowing more about all of the aspects of child safety today that I know. I think you would have these amazing topics to cover today that we're all going to want to know more about. So what do you feel are the most important things you need to know before your little one arrives home, do you feel?
That's a really great question, because I get asked this all the time. Rach, what should I make sure that I have? What are the things that are really, really important? So we've created a bit of a list for new and expecting parents, and we definitely give them access to information like this, during the course and after the course. But the number one thing that you should do before your bub arrives is make sure that you have a safe car seat. Have it professionally fitted, but also hang around so that the car fitter can tell you how to fit it. What I found really useful when I had my children is knowing how to fit a car seat correctly myself. And the reason is, my husband and I both drive different cars to work. I would usually do the drop-offs and the pickups. But if that changed at all and we had to change over car seats, I didn't want to have to pull out an instruction manual to try and figure out, or then, plan that far in advance to get it rebooked. in. I think it's really important that you know how to do these things yourself.
Mm.
The experts or the people to talk to about your car seats and how to get it fitted, go to your baby stores like your Baby Bunting and stores like that do have the most up-to-date information and on the products, but really you want to make sure that it complies with the Australian standards. You want to make sure that it's a 5 or 6 point harness and that newborns are rear facing, and that advice does change based on ages, and there's so many different options out there, but having a safe car seat to bring your baby home with is by far up there with the top things that you need to know.
Yep.
And the next thing is having a nursery, making sure your nursery is safe, it's set up, and you're ready to go for when you bring that gorgeous bub home. I think the most important part, also the most exciting part of this whole journey is, one, finding out you're pregnant, and the second thing is doing the shopping and looking at all the products and getting up to speed with your education and really preparing wholeheartedly for this bub and the new journey that your family is going to embark on. So some things that you should have in your nursery, of course, a change table, your nappies, your wipes. Make sure you've got a comfortable feeding chair, your cot, and obviously you want to make sure that the cot mattress is firm fitting and again meets the Australian standards. Bottles, breast pumps, of course having some dummies. I mean, one of my children loved their dummies, the other one was crash hot on them. And then of course all the cute clothing. The clothing is the fun part, I think.
Definitely. I think it'd be so overwhelming working out what your baby needs because there's so many products out there, Rach. So I think highlighting some of those most important things everyone needs to know about is really fantastic, because it can be so difficult to find your way through that mess of everything that's available today. So really appreciate your insight there, because there are key pieces of furniture, key things you need to consider when you want to make it safe and also functional.
Absolutely. And I think even the time, like my eldest son is 10 and my youngest is 5, and the 5 years between 1 and 2, things change, like guidelines change, what was available. Like I've got 2 boys, and I remember when Malachi was born, I would, not have access to the most amazing outfits. And then Huxley came along and it was a whole new different trend and different outfits and different, wraps. And it was just, it's a lot of fun, and just the shopping and having all of those things is just the best part, I think, of just before the baby arrives, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. So what would be the next must-do before bringing your little one home in relation to setting up your home? What's your next tip?
So the next one I would say is make sure you've got a safe pram. Prams are obviously a transport device where we're busy in everyday life, and of course having a new family member doesn't change that. So just making sure that you've got a safe pram, again speaking to the experts in what's going to suit you and your family and fit in the back of your car, but again meeting those Australian standards, having a 5-point restraint harness that goes about around Bub's waist and also their legs. You want to make sure it's got parking brakes. If it does have a carry basket, check to see that when you load it up with groceries or the nappy bag or whatever you might be carrying, that it doesn't tip. And then, of course, it should be number one. I'm a bit biased though, but life-saving education. So whether that be before Bub arrives and doing a birthing course and getting unbiased education to a holistic approach to you and your baby and that experience, or doing the first aid component of your education. So we offer that in several different methods to cater for people all over Australia, and different learning types as well. Like you mentioned at the start, I've got an extensive background in teaching. I am expert when it comes to adult learning and that environment. I really, really am passionate about making sure that when people do come to our course, they feel nothing but confident when they leave that room. And this information can sometimes be the difference between life and death, and prevention is cure, and knowing exactly what to do at the time when your babies need you the most. It's not about panic, it's about staying calm and working through that in a systematic way, and that's what we're so passionate about here at Tiny Hearts. So that should probably be number one, but we'll leave it down on the list after the safe car seat and the pram and off the shopping. So the next piece of advice I would have for you is make sure that you have some parenting resources. So whether that be on your phone in the form of apps, so Tiny Hearts has a app available, but some other pregnancy and parenting apps as well. I know when my sister had her last pup, she was constantly looking for good resources that she could trust.
Wow, these are some wonderful tips, Rach, and so useful for first-time parents. I'm sure our listeners have been taking lots of notes and getting prepared in their minds about what they'll need to do and the types of things they'll need to do before bringing their little one home. And I thank you so much for giving all this, because it really is useful. And I think I would have loved to have had this conversation with you, or to have been able to sort of, have these resources given to me before, bringing my first daughter home 19 years ago now. So I think a lot has changed, and all this information is so relevant. So just wondering as well, what would be your 5 must-have items in a first aid kit? Because over the years I've developed a bit of a first aid kit, and I think I've got a pretty good one now. But I think for first-time parents, it'd be really difficult to know what you need for your bub and for little kids.
Yeah, not a problem. I think I hear this a lot. I'll ask in the class now, pop your hand up if you've got a first aid kit, and majority of people pop their hand up, and I say, okay, make sure that you go home and go through that first aid kit and check expiry dates, because the chances are that it's, you've had it for years, or, if you're anything like me, you go, I might need a couple of extra Band-Aids at home, so I take them out of the work first aid kit. But having a paediatric specific first aid kit is really important. A lot of people don't realise the difference between a normal first aid kit and a paediatric. So essentially the difference is that everything's smaller. So your bandages aren't as long, your plasters and your Band-Aids aren't as big, and obviously because they're smaller than us. So having paediatric specific first aid kit at home, one, it's a great gift idea, but 2, it's life-saving stuff in there. So some things that you should have in your first aid kit is a resuscitation mask. In the event that you do have an unconscious and not breathing normally child or infant, it's important that we do CPR to the best of our ability, including compressions and breaths. And having a resuscitation mask gives us a better seal around the patient's nose and mouth, which delivers a better concentration of oxygen to the patient. In turn, hopefully that we see a really good outcome from that. Your everydays for your cuts, grazes and lacerations, we need Band-Aids and more Band-Aids. And of course some bandages for those bigger lacerations that we might see. Kids' skin is much more thinner than ours, so they're more prone to, when falling over, getting a bit of a graze. So forever been putting plasters and Band-Aids on little knees and elbows. The next one would be a thermometer. It's important that you have a thermometer before your bub arrives. The reason is, new and expecting parents, we tend to worry a little bit about temperature. So the normal temperature for infants, children and even adults is 37 degrees, and your child will have a temperature once that hits 38 degrees. But there's no way of knowing what your child's normal temperature is unless you take their temp when they're completely healthy. So having access to a thermometer in the early days is really important. The next one I would say is antiseptic. I'm forever putting antiseptic on, especially my 5-year-old. He falls out of trees. He, climbs the fence to talk to the neighbours. He's on his bike, his skateboard, his scooter. He tried out his older brother's rollerblades the other day, and I think, oh my gosh, he's constantly hurting himself. So the antiseptic, we clear out the graze, we put some antiseptic on it, we put a Band-Aid on it. He's very specific about what colours Band-Aids he wants at the moment. His favourite colour is green at the moment, so everything's green. And then the last one that I find solves pretty much every problem in our house, maybe it's a stubbed toe or fallen off the couch or bumped the head, whatever it is a cold pack. They're our number one go-to. We keep it in our fridge, and simply as soon as someone starts crying, someone goes to the fridge and gets the cold pack out, and it tends to solve a lot of injuries in our household.
Great. I think it's so great to have all these explained too, because obviously, you can think, I might use this for this, like for instance, the thermometer or antiseptic, but having you explain them all is a lot better. I think what I always say to people, look, what you don't know, you don't know. So having someone who's experienced and someone who's a professional in their area is going to be able to give you that information that you just don't know about. So that was really, really helpful. Thank you so much. So where can people source some of these items from? I mean, obviously you've said you've got your own kit, but just wanting to know where they can also source these, and also setting up your baby's nursery. When you're setting up the cot and things like that, what are some of the main safety considerations? Because I think that you get told a little bit about you need a cot, but and you've told us a little bit about wanting the Australian standard cot, but I guess other things to do with setting up that nursery, just in a bit more detail, would be really useful.
So the first aid kit's contents, I mean, you can go to your local chemist and you can speak to the pharmacist there. I mean, pharmacists are experts when it comes to medication, and but also help with a wide range of things such as wound care, and they know a lot about infants and babies. So you can definitely speak to them about some of those items. To answer your question about safety and the baby's nursery, so like you said, everyone's like, I need a cot, I need the furniture, but how do we know it's safe? Yes, of course, we've got our Australian standards, but it's also about setting up that nursery. So with the cot, you want to make sure that it's not near a window, in case that, as your child grows, they stand up. The last thing we want is an injury, including a window or glass, especially with our children. The next one is making sure that it's away from the curtains or blind cords. So if it is close to a window, you want to make sure that it's not near, pushed up against the window, or not next to those curtain or blind cords. If they are, and I mean, some of us are restricted with space, make sure that they're shortened or they're secured tightly to the wall, as this can obviously be a bit of a strangulation hazard. Some other safety measures like bumpers, toys, and decorative items in the cot. We don't want any of that in the cot when Bub is sleeping. So of course, once Bub is out of the cot and you've made the bed, of course you can put some decorative items, some toys, and their favourite cuddly things in there. But it's really important that when they're sleeping, that's not in there, just to make sure they're in a safe sleeping environment. We don't want any electric blankets. And of course, when it comes to the cot mattress, it needs to fit snug, so no gaps around it. And again, there's lots on the market, so just checking that they do meet that Australian standard. Another thing that used to be a bit of a recommendation was like lamb's wool underneath Bub to keep them warm. So they don't actually recommend any soft bedding underneath Bub at all. They should be sleeping on their back on a firm and flat mattress. So they are really important things to take into consideration when you are setting up the cot. The last recommendation I would have is in regards to infant and children toys. I think it's really important to make sure that we read the labels on them and make sure that they're age appropriate, that our infants and children are supervised when they are playing with toys. So, if something was to happen, that we could act quickly. Even looking at the choke test, check test that you can download from the internet or from our website, just to make sure that the toys pass that, and then making sure that they're not in the cots when Bub is in the cot as well.
Yeah, great. I love those tips. I think it's can be so helpful to have some guidelines to follow when you're creating a safe environment for your little one, because it can be really hard to know what the standards are and what is recommended now, because I think things have changed so much over the years, like you said about the lamb's wool, and you said about different things to do with, I guess safety considerations with fixing things to the wall. All of that information is just so vital, because you may not have even thought about it before if you're not a parent already. So I think that's so important. I remember worrying about visitors coming as well when I had my first, and not knowing, I guess, how to be safe, how to keep my baby safe, what I should ask them to do before coming to visit. Do you have any tips around that? Because I think it can be overwhelming with thinking about how many people might come, whether they've got clean hands, whether they've been exposed to any germs, and your baby is so precious and tiny, and when they first come home. So any hot tips around that?
Absolutely. Again, this is a question we get asked all the time in our classes, and definitely on our social networks as well, is, what are some things that I need to communicate to, the visitors and the family? And this is something I was very passionate about, especially when I had my last son. I was making sure that everyone was vaccinated, everyone had their whooping cough vaccination. And if they didn't, Craig and I, my husband and I, were very comfortable telling people that we didn't want them to visit at this point. But I appreciate that people aren't always like that. So some things that you could also do is just pop something up on your own social media, or send a text message around to let everyone know that Bub's going to arrive soon. And if everyone could just respect the fact that we are welcoming our new baby, and there's a few things that we would really appreciate them to follow. So, avoid popping in and just dropping in. What if they've had a really horrible night, or, they haven't slept, the house is a mess. The last thing they need to worry about is visitors. I know it's usually people are coming from a really nice space, but just send a text ahead, or even a phone call and saying, hey, would you mind if we pop in at this time? Again, like I said, get vaccinated with that whooping cough immunisation if you haven't had your booster. If you're feeling sick, stay away, even if that's a little sniffle and you don't think it's much. Our infants don't have a great immune system. They can't really fight off anything. So we don't want to make the newborn bubble hard for any parents. It's already a tough gig with, sleepless nights and regular feeds and, navigating a new relationship. And we definitely don't want to add sickness in the mix there. So alongside that, no kisses. Try not to kiss the bub. I know it's so hard because newborn babies, all you want to do is kiss them and cuddle them and love them. But if we can avoid doing that, don't post photos on social media. Let the new parents enjoy their new baby and let them post when they're ready and maybe share a post. I know we're all proud. Definitely, I'm a proud auntie to Wolf and Nala, my sisters too, and I'm sure my brother is starting to think about babies as well soon. And it's something that I was really cautious of is it's their moment and let them enjoy the moment. And although I was so excited and I spoiled them rotten, when they post a photo, I was the first to share it, and that was how I showed my support there. Don't create more work. So if you're going to come over, don't expect the tea or coffee or the piece of cake. Just pop over. Even if there's some washing there, fold it for them. Or make mum or dad a cup of coffee and offer to hold bub, while they do that. Or let them go have a shower while you hold bub if they're comfortable with that. Don't overstay your welcome. This was something that I was very cautious of as well, especially when Wolf came along. Nick had a 2-year-old as well as a newborn, and I was very proactive about trying to help all the time. But it's knowing that line, okay, everyone needs a bit of family time, and so that cue to leave. And don't be offended if they don't want you to come over. It's not because they don't want to see you. It's just because life's busy, and they're trying to enjoy every second of that newborn bubble. So just respect that. And if you are going to visit and if they have said, yes, come on over, bring a gift, whether it be some food, whether it be, a voucher for something, a bunch of flowers. Bring mama something because she's doing all this amazing work, or even dad something. They're doing all this amazing work and they're navigating such a new space. And if you're already a parent, you know what that time's like. So as much support as you can give is definitely the best.
Yeah, there's some great tips. I think it can sometimes feel like it's a revolving door of people visiting in those first few weeks when you bring your little one home, and I think it can be really hard to know how to deal with that. And if you don't feel comfortable asking for what you want, or you don't necessarily like to be telling people what to do, I think now's the time to really think about that and think about what's important to you and how you're going to want to communicate with everyone. So those tips are great. So thank you so much for your time today, Rachael. It's been wonderful with your experience as both a mother and in your paediatric work, as well as Tiny Hearts education has been so invaluable to share today. I'm sure that all the listeners at home have got a page full of notes and some great ideas on how to create a safe space for the little one, and the new addition that we bring home soon into their lives, and creating that amazing space and feeling educated before they bring their little one home.
It's been my absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me today, Tiffany, and I hope that everyone listening along has got some great tips and tricks out of today's podcast. Thank you.
Yeah, I hope so too, and I really think they have learned a few things. All the listeners today, I feel that they will have taken some things home, like I have too, even just myself looking back and thinking about all the things I wish I'd known. So if anyone would like to learn a bit more about baby first aid, please head over to www.tinyheartseducation.com to book into one of their courses. They have online and private face-to-face courses that are available. You can also find them on Instagram at Tiny Hearts Education. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to tune in today. I hope you found this helpful. Don't forget to subscribe and tell your friends about this podcast. And if you'd like listening, please leave us a review. See you next time.